Back in the chapter on branches, we talked about how you could have one local branch that stays rather closely in sync with the progress of another branch. And this process is called tracking. And as an example, I showed you how TextEdits could track master. The idea here is that we want to keep the two pretty closely in sync. So we're regularly going to pull updates from master and merge them into TextEdits. That way it never gets too far out of touch. And even though it happens less frequently, whenever we're done with our work in TextEdit and we're ready to merge it back in, master is probably the branch that we want to merge it back into. Now, tracking is really common with remote branches, and it works in a similar way. Plus, with a little bit of configuration, we get to save ourselves some typing by letting the master branch know what remote branch should it be using when it's doing its fetch and when it's doing its push. We won't have to specify it each and every time. It'll have a default setting by knowing its tracking branch. Now, when we did our first git push, we did it with the -u option, and I told you at the time that that was about creating the tracking branch and that we'd talk about it later. Well, that time is now. If we don't do git push with the u option, it does not track any remote branch. All it does is push our code up there, and that's it. It doesn't keep any kind of reference that this is the branch that we're going to be working with in the future. The -u option says push it up there and also make a note of the fact because we're going to be coming back and working with this branch frequently. When we did a git clone to create our Lynda version, it does track the remote branch. And we can see that tracking here, git config. You can see that our branch master is set up to track the ref heads master that's on origin. That's what it's going to track. That's how you know that it's a tracking branch. By contrast, let's switch back over. We'll go backwards a directory, and then let's go into our Explore California folder. We can see the same thing is true here if we do cat git config. But let's create one that doesn't track it. Let's create one that doesn't have the -u option to see the difference. Let's create a branch off of master that we can then use. Let's do git branch, and let's call this branch non-tracking. That'll make it clear what's up. And then now we know how to push that to origin, and we're going to push non-tracking. So wait 1 minute, wants my credentials. Okay, it pushes it up there. And now let's take a look again at the git config, and you'll see that it does not have a listing here. Right? It pushed it up there, but it said, all right, here you go, remote repository. I'm done with you. There's no sort of connection in the future between our non-tracking branch and what's going on at GitHub. That -u option or cloning it created that tracking branch. Now, I'm going to leave this a non-tracking branch, but I just want to let you know that if you ever end up with a branch that's not tracking and you want to make it tracking, then you have three choices. Either you can come in and add these so that they are similar, or you can use the git config commands. It's git config branch, and then whatever the branch name is. In this case, it would be non-tracking, remote, and then the name of the remote, origin. And then you would do the same thing for the option for merge, refs, heads, master. So that would give you those same configurations in the .config file. Or if you're using git 1.7, which most of you should be, unless you've got an old version of Git for some reason, you can use git branch -- set upstream, which is also what the U option is. That -u that was used when we did a push, that's the shortcut for set upstream. And then we can say non-tracking origin non-tracking. And that will tell it what its upstream server is. It'll tell it what the remote is that it ought to track. So again, I'm not going to do any of those. I'm just going to leave it so that our non-tracking branch stays non-tracking so that if we ever want to see the difference, we can switch over there and try it out.